Welcome. In this tutorial, I'm going to try to do a thorough job of switch management, which is our first section in week number 3. So I want to welcome to week number 3. I will try to do a thorough job of humanly possible on these switch aspects. They are not as hard as it seems like it possibly is. So sit back and relax. Grab yourself a cup of coffee. Hopefully, we will understand a great many things that transpire. So first thing you need to understand is the command line. And command line is really nothing more than the list of commands that you're going to give to a switch as opposed to through the GUI interface. Most of the companies prefer command line, as those are the things that you can really do to take total control over it. Those of you that are familiar with networks and operating systems may already be used to PowerShell, which you can do a lot more with PowerShell than you can with the standard commands in here. So we need to understand that there's managed switches, unmanaged switches, in band and out of band management. Each one has its pluses, minuses, so I'll go over each one. Again, a managed switch is the one that you're going to need in a business environment. The reason why you need it is because that's the one that you can assign IP addresses, you can define ports, you can actually enable and disable a specific port, you can create VLANs, you can do many, many, many things that you could not do with an unmanaged switch. An unmanaged switch is just something that you would have at home. You would go to Office Depot or you would go to Best Buy and you would pay your $50 or $75 for an 8-port switch, maybe a 12-port switch, and then you can hook up all your computers and maybe network printers. However, they are all going to be on the same network and that you cannot do any management whatsoever. So then we have in-band and out-of-band. So basically, in-band is going to allow you to connect through your network through an IP address in there that you need to find out what it is. Of course, if there's a switch that's right out of the box, it's going to have a default IP address. Normally, what you're going to do is use the out-of-band management. So in order to set the out-of-band management switch, that's the easiest way to do it, is to connect directly to the console port through a rollover cable, which you'll see what they are shortly. And then if you want to later on make simple changes, you can connect through Telnet or SSH. Remember that Telnet is not secure. So be very, very, very careful when you do that, because what's going to do, it's going to put the data that is unencrypted, it's plain text on the wire. Anybody that has a packet sniffer can get your passwords to do that. So if you're on a network that you think there may be an issue, make sure you're using SSH. The best way to do it is to get a laptop and use out-of-band management where you're connecting directly to the console port. So here's an unmanaged switch. Go in there, spend your $50 or whatever it is, and I've seen them $19.99. But remember, you get what you pay for. But it serves the purposes for most home networks that maybe only have 3 or 4 computers and a printer. A managed switch is going to have a little bit more sophistication, may have more features, and it should have a console port that's going to allow you to connect directly to it. So again, this is a access over here. So you just go into the laptop, you're going to use a rollover cable, and you're going to connect directly to it, depending upon the type of cable that you have. So here's a standard rollover cable. Now, I do not understand why, but Cisco, in their infinite wisdom, has decided to not include a $12 cable with their $5,000 switches. So I guess they're not making enough profit on a $5,000 switch. Don't know. They did not consult with me. So bear that in mind. If you purchase one, be prepared to purchase a rollover cable. However, the problem with this, if you look and see, there is a serial port. I have not seen a laptop that has a serial port anymore. In fact, most laptops might not even have a network port. Everything is all done wireless, or you need to have a special adapter to do that. So what you can get is a converter from USB to serial, or you can purchase a USB to a console. You can get one from Amazon probably for $12 or $13. So here is a device access. This obviously is a managed switch because it has a console port. So you can use sometimes the port number 8 for the same purposes. Check your switch documentation to determine. Now here we have the command line interface. The very first thing you're going to do when you connect to it is going to see something that is nothing. You're going to hit the enter key and you're still not going to be able to do anything, but it's going to have a prompt. You can do some show commands, but you really can't make any settings. So you have to get into what's called privilege mode, and all you have to do is type enable. A shortcut for that is ANA. Then you will see a number sign as the prompt. To do more sophisticated commands, in other words, configure terminal ports, you would have to type in config T, which stands for configure terminal, and there are shortcuts for that as well. You can see I have config T. I believe you can type in just CONFT. What you can do on your switch, just type in as few characters as you can and see what it lets you do. So switch configuration. Remember, switches operate at level 2. So here's some facts that I put in here. They do not need to have an IP address, but it's a good idea to put one in there. Switch ports themselves don't need to have an IP address unless they're at layer 3. However, not all switches, in fact, most switches are just layer 2. The ones that are layer 3 are also going to do routing. So switches have only one active IP address, which is important. So here's what I was talking about in here. This is going to actually be part of one of the simulations. So what you're going to do is to get into the switch, you type enable. You're going to type in config T or configure terminal. And what we're doing here is we're setting the IP address of the actual switch itself. So we're typing in, notice the number sign as soon as you type enable. Then you're going to type config, and you're going to do interface VLAN 1. Anything that you need to do to a specific ports, you need to type in the interface and whatever you're trying to work on. This is you're actually working on a VLAN. So here you're going to type in IP address subnet mask in here. Now notice, as soon as you type in interface VLAN 1, it changes to config-if. So you know you're in interface mode. So it's IP space address space IP address itself. So you type obviously the IP address, and then you type the subnet mask. So you would just do IP address and something like 192.168.1.20, and the subnet mask will probably be 255.255.255.0. I have to check that. Now make sure you do the no shutdown, because without that the port may be disabled. No shutdown. Make sure that VLAN is enabled. VLAN 1. VLAN 1, by the way, is the default VLAN in there. So if you're setting up VLANs, you cannot use VLAN 1. So this is a special blank slide. No, this is not a picture of Alaska in the wintertime. So apparently it's time for me to delete that one because it's been there the last 3 times that I've shown it. So now we're talking about switch interconfiguration, and we're going to do the interfaces and the ports, which is basically the things that you want to learn in this section over here. Understand the difference between a forwarding database and CAM, or the content addressable memory. Basically, the switches are going to learn, and it's going to keep track of MAC addresses and where they are. That is so you don't have to send out a broadcast every single time to find out where you need to send a particular IP address, which actually is really sending it to the MAC address. The reason why you send it to a MAC address instead of an IP address is because IP addresses can change, but the MAC addresses, as you're well aware, should never change. So basically, the forwarding database is where it's going to forward it to the next port. Content address memory is just simply memory, and it stores information about ports and MAC addresses and where you should go when you're looking for a particular IP address. It's going to have the MAC address of that IP address in memory and go boom directly to that. So the switch operations consist of learn, they consist on forward, and then they consist on filter. And those are the 3 things that there. The learning obviously is we need to learn about each of the other switches on the network and how to connect to them and what they connect to. We need to learn where to forward something if something is not on our particular broadcast domain. And we need to filter out if somebody does something idiotic like put on a hub in the network. So here is a typical 4 computer operation here. So you notice that each A, B, C, and D are in a specific port, and they're called E1, E2, E3, and of course E0, which it starts here. So you're going to learn the MAC address. Now they've used a simplified MAC address, 111, so on in here. So the next slide describes that you have the contact air address in memory, which stores all these things in here. Again, so there's not much difference in this slide over here. But now we go into the learning, the forwarded, and the filtering aspect in here. No information at this point in time has actually been sent. But now we have A is trying to go and to another computer. So the very first thing is E0 is going to learn that, oh, on E0 is MAC address 1111. That's neat. So it makes an entry in the CAM table right there, as you can see. Then again, the learning, the forwarding, and the filtering goes on. So now we're going to go to another computer, but we have no idea where we're going to go to. So what's going to happen is we don't need to send it out on E0 because it knows that E0 already occupied. So it'll send out a broadcast on E1, E2, and E3 saying, hey, I need to know where you are. Respond if you're this particular computer. So here it's going to respond with each of the individuals. So apparently it looks like it's going to computer 3. So computer 3 says, hey, this is me. So now the CAM table now has E1 on there as well as E0, and it has E2 has in there rather than E1. So then now we don't have to worry about if we're sending something out from any one of these computers can send something out and it automatically knows where computer C is. And again, same thing, it's going to learn where all of them are. So eventually they don't have to know anything other than, hey, I'm good to go. I'll send it there. And it does get refreshed from time to time in case something does change, of course. Now here you have a switch that has a hub hooked up to it. There's no logical reason to put a hub. So in the hub, they're connecting hosts E, F, and G. And remember, hubs are layer 1. So they can't perform switching operations. If you are an IT administrator and one of your techs puts in a hub, I think you suggest a new career to that person because they obviously do not understand how they are. So again, when you're sending something out and you want to go to from A to say G, what's going to wind up happening is it's going to send everything out to E, F, and G. However, it doesn't know that. So let's just say we're sending something to D, and it does not know that D is in there in this particular case, even though it's in the CAM table. Let's say it's not. So it's going to send it out to D, and then it's also going to send it out to the hub. Then the hub is going to send things out to E, G, and F. The next time it sends it out to D, it doesn't have to worry about it. It knows where D is. But now they want to send something out to E. So it's going to go, okay, well, we know that E is on the port where hub 666 MAC address is. So we send it there, and the hub sends it out to E, F, and G. Now we're going to send it out to E again. The hub doesn't keep track of anything. So it's going to send it out to E, F, and G. The next time we send to E, it's going to send it out to E, F, and G. So there's a lot of wasted things in there. So do not use a hub. And then again, the layer 2 configurations consist of passwords, IP addresses, and the default gateway in there. So now we have the switch port again. We're going to configure the console. Make sure you enable passwords. Passwords really are probably the most important item that you can set in a switch. If you don't set a password, anybody can plug into it directly. There's nothing that you can do about it, and they can delete everything. They can make whatever changes that they want to do. So also you can assign an IP address. It's going to allow you to configure the switch over the network. I would suggest, again, using Secure Shell SSH, using that in there. It's a layer 2 switch. Again, requires only one IP address, so you can just hook it up and say the configuration in there. You probably also want to set up a default gateway inside the switch. So again, this is a little example of that and more examples of the same thing. So you can see that it does have a very specific thing. It has the We're going to learn about later on, a trunk port can be set up to connect between switches and switches. Again, more information of the same thing. So you have a lab to do, configure switch ports. There's many really good labs in there. Virtual LANs. I've given you the actual definition of a virtual LAN. There's many of them, but basically it's a group of devices, and I'm going to read this to you, on one or more local area net are configured to communicate as if they are attached on the same wire, but they are really on different network segments or different LAN segments. The VLAN ID is nothing more than a numeric number. Obviously, one is for the network itself, the main network, which is the default, but you can have VLAN 2, VLAN 10, VLAN 12, really doesn't matter. And you can set up your ports for specific VLANs, and you can address those things directly to one group. That way you can have sales communicate with accounting if that's what you desire. Otherwise, they would be totally separate. So again, you're going to configure switch ports, which is really easy. You're basically setting up VLANs, and then you're just going to use a switch port access command, and you'll see how to do that in the actual simulations itself. Again, this is more of the same over here. We talked about this before. This is basically a duplication of the slides in here. Switch configuration again. Same thing over here. This is basically more of the same over here. I just want to emphasize again, because this is a repeated slide, do not, do not, do not use a hub. Again, same thing over here. More of the information is in here. You can see how it learns. You can see how it processes. You can see how it's sent to all if it's not. Again, this is just duplications so you can get through the process in here. So we're going through again some of the same things over here. And see if we missed anything. So we're going through the same things over again. And at that point in time, we are done. I've addressed many things duplicated in here just to get you to see how they are. So that's it for this video tutorial. I hope this is helpful to you.